Good evening to everyone who's joining this webinar in India. Very early good morning to those who are joining us from overseas, and possibly a late good evening to those east of us. We had taken almost a 2-month break from our webinar series due to public demand as the pandemic situation eased out and people were trying to find a little normalcy in their lives. So their Saturdays were a little occupied. And because of the requests of a lot of people, we said we'd keep a hold on this. But we see tremendous value in having these webinars, not only from the point of knowledge dissemination, but for so many activities and actions that are emerging out of many of these conversations. Today's webinar, I'm sure, will not be an exception. It is something that's very much on the radar of this country. Manufacturing is considered to be the backbone of our industry and in many ways of our GDP. And 2 quarters ago, when India showed a negative 24% drop in GDP, a lot of it was because manufacturing was impacted. I think since then, Atmanirbhar Bharat has kicked in. There's a lot of excitement around that. But let us not forget that missions are finished. So Atmanirbhar Bharat will start and finish. But I think the purpose should be ongoing. So what you will hear at this evening's webinar is a purpose, from invention to innovation, which is not just a mission, but it goes far, far beyond a mission. And I think that's where the importance is. I'm delighted to introduce our speaker for this evening, Professor Madhusudan Rao, Professor of Mechanical Engineering and Design at IIT Delhi. Professor Rao obtained his PhD from IIT Kanpur and has been since then on the visiting faculty both at MIT and at Stanford. Needless to say, several patents to his credit, and many of which I'm told have been commercialized. And I'm sure that's where his conversation today will begin. He's a fellow of the ASME and a recipient of IIT Delhi's KL Chopra Faculty Research Award in its first inaugural year. And over and above that, I think he's received many, many accolades in his illustrious journey as an engineer and a teacher. Moderating the conversation along with me today is Siddharth Das. Modestly, he calls himself Mr. Siddharth Das because he has a PhD from Cornell University. So he should be Dr. Das. Also an alumnus of IIT Delhi. He has held leadership positions at Intel Corporation. I think, and of course, he's been granted 5 or 6 patents. But I think most important, I think he came back to India in the year 2000 as part of Intel Capital, heading Intel Capital in South Asia. And currently he's a general partner at Venture East Fund, an early stage tech and life sciences focused VC. So I'm sure we have a very interesting conversation now, and I'll put you on the floor, Professor Rao, right now, and for you to begin your conversation. Siddharth and I will mute ourselves and also get off the video so you have the full screen for your presentation.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. And firstly, I thank all of you for joining this webinar today. Being a holiday, it's good to see so many people for the webinar. And I thank IIT Alumni Center Bangalore for this wonderful opportunity to share some of my thoughts on this subject. The subject which is actually given to me is more from invention to innovation, looking at more from the virtual cycle point of view. I should confess that I am not an expert on this subject, but I think I'll definitely do my job to trigger enough discussion so that we can continue to discuss this subject as a part of this webinar and even beyond. Okay, thanks once again. Since we are also discussing this subject more from the IIT perspective, organized by IIT Alumni Center, Bangalore. We would also look at, we can start with probably look at journey of IIT so far. I would start with that. As we all know, IIT started more as a teaching institutes many decades back, and have done a wonderful job of knowledge dissemination in all these years. And we have a rich base of alumni who have done wonderfully well. Somewhere down the line, IITs actually became fairly big in terms of knowledge creation, which is more to do with research. And now we can say that almost all the IITs, new and old ones, have a fairly good research programs in place. And research is very central to all the IITs, which is there. So we have had these two pillars for very long. I think one thing which we are now seeing, both in old IITs as well as new IITs, is that a third pillar, which is emerging very strongly, which we call as a knowledge application. So I have put it as a teaching, research, innovation as a very loosely, probably just for our conversation. But the idea is to discuss more about knowledge creation and knowledge application as a part of this. Now, what we do is that what we see is particularly that IITs are doing pretty well in almost all three aspects. Knowledge application, though, started late, maybe a decade back or so, more strongly. But I think a lot of metrics show that IITs have done fairly well. Now, the question comes when we have done probably well in all three aspects, where is that we lack to be, let's say, one of the world's best tech institutes or a university in the world, is when we look back, we see that we have done individually well in all these aspects. But I think more important, a hallmark of any great university or a institute, I feel, is that also the linkages which these three pillars have. And these linkages are bidirectional. That means each of these activities actually enriches the other two very strongly. And I think it's probably a time when we look at these linkages more strongly, probably that is one area where I feel that IITs have to do a lot of work to be probably be placed in some of the best universities of the world. And that's how I see as a journey of, or a future journey of IITs, strengthening these three links, bidirectional links, in a big manner. Now, this model can also be used to assess a hallmark of any great university or institute. In other words, if I want to assess, let's say, a university and where it stands in terms of its performance, etc., one can look at how institute or a university is doing individually well in these three activities, but also each of these links, which actually gives me 9 parameters, and the overall ecosystem which comes because of all the three pillars is the 10th. So 10 parameters, if I am able to assess and say that I am doing very well in these parameters, I think we can aspire to be, and we can be one of the, probably the top 10, 20 or 50 universities in the world, or even better. So this also gives us one kind of a framework. How do we assess ourselves in terms of what we are doing and how well we are trying to do? This assessment is more in terms of the process, what we do and how well we do. If we do well in all these 10 parameters, it should actually ultimately show in the form of the outcomes. So another way to measure our excellence of academics and research and innovation is in terms of outcomes. When we compare ourselves, or when we look at, let's say, top 10 universities in the world or top 10 institutes in the world, what we see is that when we look at the metrics of outcome, usually we come across outcomes such as this. And if you look at these outcomes, for example, take any best universities in the world, it would have created some new fields of research or new models of academic industry interaction, or some new technologies. Universities would be associated with certain new inventions and technologies which have changed the fabric of society. And venture creation is another very big aspect to assess a university. And new system of interdisciplinary interactions and alumni who have done very well. Also, how well is the ecosystem to attract the best students and faculty from all over the world. And big endowments and financial sustainability would be another parameter. So we expect that probably this is another way to look at how well a university does. Probably the best universities would be doing on most of these. Now, when we look at IIT perspective, we may have done well in some of these, but I think we are still not there in terms of all the parameters. And I think that's probably is the subject of today. And we can look at probably how to reach there or what can be done to bridge this particular gap. Now, particularly when I look at a couple of parameters, like in terms of venture creation, in terms of alumni who are global leaders, IITs have done wonderfully well. Thanks to our wonderful alumni who probably made these parameters to happen, this thing, but I think we have to still look at other parameters which are very, very important. So I look at journey of IITs more from strengthening these links. But as far as today's subject is concerned, probably we'll just concentrate on these two links, look at more of a knowledge creation and knowledge application. Maybe we can come back to the other links and pillars in another subject. But I think this would be the subject. Let's look at what is the kind of coupling which we have, or what is the kind of synergy which we have, and how to bridge the gap between knowledge creation and application. That would be a good subject to discuss. Another way or another probably a model or another way to look at where we are in terms of knowledge creation and knowledge application is to look at this graph, which is a pretty standard graph, which is used by most of the people all over the world. That what is the space you operate in terms of knowledge creation and knowledge application. And often this is divided in terms of 4 quadrants. And more specifically, what is the quadrant in which we are operating, and where are the weaknesses which can be strengthened in order to be the best university in the world. So when we look at, of course, often these quadrants are also named. For example, you have a pure basic research, which is called as a Bohr's quadrant, pure applied research, which is called as Edison quadrant, and user-inspired basic research, which is often called as a Pasteur quadrant. Now let's look at more from this particular graph and the space. Where are the IITs and where are actually the gaps which can be done? Now, looking from knowledge creation point of view, and I think we have done pretty well. If you really look at IITs, in terms of all the parameters which actually are used in terms of knowledge creation, whether in terms of number of PhD students, number of publications, number of citations, and IITs have done pretty well and are continuously expanding and trying to improve this particular aspect in this. Just to give an example, in some areas, India is ranked like 3rd in the world in terms of their research. For example, if you look at nanotechnology, where it has been acknowledged on multiple forums, the India's contribution to research, this shows the 10 leading countries in terms of publications in nanotechnology in 2019. So we are behind China and USA and have done pretty well in terms of publications. But having said that, though we would continue to strive to do better and probably even improve our research credentials and research output, one of the things which probably we would like to look at is that how well we have done in terms of exploitation or translation of this research. how well or how good we are in terms of converting our research output in terms of products and solutions useful for a society. Probably that is one area which actually needs really a strengthening. Now, when I go back to the same year 2019, where we had a fairly good publication, and if I look at the patents which are filed in the nanotechnology in the same year, we don't stand anywhere in the top 10. And if I look at probably the top 20, we are somewhere in the 19th with a very small number of patents which are actually filed in the space of nanotechnology. And all of us know that filing a patent is actually a very first step in the long path of science to a wealth creation. And if you're not doing well in the first step, probably we have more things to bother and to look at. So that is one probably area which actually needs a lot of strengthening, is how do we convert our research output into economic and probably social benefits. That's one, I think, where there is a lot of effort which is needed. Now, this is not very specific to India alone. In fact, the entire Europe is looking at this aspect. This is a results from a 2-year-old report, which came from European Union. When they looked at the output of Europe, research output of Europe, they found that the 7% of the world population produces like 1/3 of the high quality research papers in terms of publications. But I think where Europe actually fails to do well is in terms of converting again this research output into innovation and entrepreneurship. And particularly when you look at the valuation of companies, they lag behind China and USA in a much bigger way. So we are somewhat in a similar situation today. And I think probably that's one thing to look at. Now, what can be done to improve? Here are a few suggestions which again come from some of our own experiences and experience of colleagues and other faculties. So one thing is, if you look at any research group in a IIT laboratory, you'll find students who are masters, PhD students, postdoctoral, all of them trying to basically do a research and publish. But I think we also need another cadre of people in laboratories who probably come for a few years of stay, like a postdoctoral fellows, who are very keen to take this research output and probably translate into products and solutions. And I think such fellowships and such manpower is something which is strongly lacking. And I think that's one gap which we would like to bridge. And in terms of incubators, almost all IITs have incubators. But I think the number of startup companies which are actually looking at deep tech is still very small. That's one thing where separate focus is needed and more incentives would be required for the translational research. And also system of technology transfer and licensing. Most of the IITs have a technology transfer and licensing office. Many of them are more in a reactive mode than a proactive mode, like marketing the technologies which are the science and technology which came out of IITs, and marketing them needs a much more proactive steps and efforts. Also, this is one, faculty externships in industries is something which UK has tried very successfully, where university gets additional ranking points if any of the faculty would have actually spent a considerable time in an industry in a year. And I think they are incentivized for that. This is another model which we would like to do. Because the moment a faculty who is very active in research spends some time in industry, this translational aspect comes in many ways naturally. And I think that would probably improve. And we also had a very good scheme such as Imprint and UAI, where which are primarily meant for translational research. And I think we need more of those. And also incentives, and more importantly, what are the kind of metrics of evaluation which we have for translational research would also probably dictate how well we do in terms of this. So there are certain areas of improvement for IITs. Some of them are already implemented by a few IITs, but I think it still needs more efforts and discussion on this particular subject to improve the translational aspect of the research. So that is definitely a one important area. These are some of the areas. There may be more which we can probably discuss as we can go along. Now, when I look at the second aspect, which is more from the knowledge application point of view, and I think here too, we seem to have done pretty well. Like particularly in terms of this space is probably very rich in terms of the recent graduates and the alumni who have actually created large number of ventures. IIT's efforts are very well recognized in terms of startup ecosystem and even in terms of the number of unicorns which are actually created by IIT alumni is one area where we have done pretty well. And we would like to continue to do this. But one thing which we will see that most of the startups which have come are not pretty big in terms of new knowledge creation. I think most of these startups have kind of leveraged the pain points or the problems faced by industry, society, and the people, and try to convert these pain points into opportunities in terms of startups. And that's why we see that there are more startups in the form of probably digital technologies, IT, software, and software as a service are the areas where we see most of our unicorns which have come up from this. So just to give another indicator, and I think one of the ways to look at how well we have done is in terms of valuation, both in terms of startups and other industries as well. Now, when we look at, like for example, the metrics of, again, a knowledge application, we see that this is a more recent graphics from 2021, where it gives the number of startups which are actually created by various institutes in India. And you can see that IITs have done pretty well, even better than IIMs in many respects when it comes to an entrepreneurship. And when we rate IITs as a system and look at probably the startup, it's also the fourth largest producer of unicorn startups in the world. IITs as this thing. So all these metrics show that somewhere we are able to do well in terms of knowledge application. But these knowledge application activities are not very big in terms of knowledge creation, but it's independent of that. Leveraging the existing science and technology is probably which is common to most of these activities which we see. Another very interesting trend which we have seen in the last decade or so is that there are some special labs and special groups which have come up in IITs who have actually looked more from the social innovation perspective and try to use the existing knowledge to actually make an impact more in terms of a social innovation. And these are the labs, probably they are not teaching labs, they are not research labs. I think they are the labs which are created with a specific aim of a particular area of impact, and whether it's a medical technology or assistive technology, and have done well. Just to give an example of some of these labs, just these are representative examples. I don't have an exhaustive list. I'm sure each IIT would have some of these examples, and the numbers may be much more, but these are just to give a representative examples. So for example, there is a lab at IIT Madras, which has done wonderful work in terms of coming up with assistive technologies, which have not only reached the market, but have made a huge impact. And so in all these labs, what you see is that the primary goal is the knowledge application, and knowledge creation is secondary. In other words, you identify a need first, and then probably look at what is the technology which can enable this need to be addressed. And then you are open and flexible to look at whatever technology which can make it happen, and adapt that to solve this particular societal problem. So we see, for example, IIT Hyderabad now has a Center for Healthcare Entrepreneurship, which is doing pretty well. Similarly, there are similar centers which are at IIT Bombay, IIT Delhi, and other places. Just to give an example of one of the labs, particularly the lab with which I was associated for a more than a decade, we have a joint biodesign program and a lab with All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And this particular program started almost 10 years back. So what we do here is to identify unmet needs of the society, particularly in healthcare, and put a team as a part of a fellowship program of 2 years, where they go from need to a product solution, and also try to take it to a people, society, or industry through a variety of ways. And this particular program has done pretty well for various reasons. Firstly, it's a very systematic program, from going from identifying need to identifying a solution and beyond. And second thing is, this is also a highly interdisciplinary team which works. Usually, every team which is working on a medical technology will have at least one designer, one engineer, and one physician, so that your team is complete in terms of the specialities which are needed to realize a medical technology device. And if we really look at, for example, the kind of impact which we had in last 10 years, it's pretty satisfying in the sense there are close to about 50 devices which have been invented, and we had 137 IP filings so far. 22 technologies have been transferred to industry, and 14 startups, spin-offs which came from this particular program. Now, if you look at this type of a program, the knowledge creation component is very, very small. I don't think any of these fellows, 150 plus fellows who came, probably had written any major papers. Probably writing a papers is not on their mind, but they all have an agenda to come up with that one or two devices which can be taken to people and an impact can be made. And some of the startups have done pretty well of taking their products not only in India, but even we see some of these products being used in dozens of hospitals in US and Europe, which is also a kind of a success. Now, this is another route where you are looking at knowledge application, but without looking at much from the knowledge creation point of view, which is probably a second route. And looking at the success of this particular program, now both ICMR and Department of Biotechnology have started another 12 such centers, and many of them are in IITs now. And so this program is expanding and scaling, and probably going ahead, we will see a lot of more medtech innovations coming from the country. One other very important point which I particularly wanted to address is that when you actually start looking at the knowledge application without much bothering about knowledge creation, because from the impact perspective, particularly if you take the wicked problems of the society and have a kind of a resolution to address, you can also see that it actually throws up completely new research challenges. And those research challenges are actually much more exciting than the kind of the traditional research which we do in our laboratories. And this is one point where IITs are pretty new in terms of taking up the most wicked problems of the society And in order to address that, what is the new science or the new technology which is needed to be created? And then probably going back to knowledge creation, because your knowledge application demands it, is something which we have not seen much so far. But I think it is trying to happen in many places. And this is a very exciting thing, because if this happens, then we know that we have a complete cycle where knowledge creation pushes basically prompts you to do knowledge creation, and vice versa. And this becomes a kind of a cycle, which is an important aspect. I'll just give an example of this particular aspect. I was also part of a laboratory at IIT Delhi, which is called Assistive Technology or Assistech Lab, where we create the diagrams, particularly for the people who are visually challenged. How do you make a pictorial content accessible to the blind? And when we looked at the process and technology, it looked like a very simple and not very difficult to do. If you are able to create a tactile diagram, which visually challenged people can touch instead of seeing, and can garner the same information, you probably have addressed the problem of making pictorial content, at least the diagrams, accessible for the blind. And what you see at the bottom here are simple thermoformed plastic sheets with the embossed diagrammatic or a visual diagrammatic content, which can be touched and which can be used by the visually challenged people. When we were getting into this particular aspect, we thought this is too trivial in terms of technology. There is no high tech in that. There is not much science when we were trying to do. But I think the main, I would say main challenge came when these diagrams were actually given for people to actually study and write their board exams and others, because now we are converted most of the NCERT STEM books into the accessible content through this particular project and lab. And when these were given, then the real challenge actually came. The real challenge which came is the diagrams which are generally prepared for a visual route, they don't work for a tactile route, because the way brain processes the information from visual route and tactile route is very different. And it requires one to understand cognitive science of tactile graphics. And this led for us to put half a dozen PhD students to understand this aspect before we go back and make diagrams more effective for people to use. And when we looked at the world, the research in this particular subject, we found that there is no one who has actually done a research on this particular subject. So then it becomes a new area of a research, not only for us, but also for the rest of the world. And we were able to involve a large number of PhD students, go back to knowledge creation from a very simple knowledge application to address this particular issue. So this is just an example of how a very simple application also throws a very new research challenge, and you have to go back to a knowledge creation. So what I'll do is probably I'll just pause here and give probably ask Mr. Das if there are any questions which I can take up before I go to my second part of the
Professor Rao, there are some questions from the participants, but I'll start with some of my questions and then
sure.
that. So one of the things that you've done, I think very interesting analysis, which is deconstructing the problem, as they say, that you have these 9 or 10 metrics of assessment. So in your experience, when you look at these metrics, what do you see as kind of the weak point of which of the metrics are not quite working well? And is it a matter of focus, or is it a system?
I think it's a matter of focus. If you really look at, I spoke about 2 different ways of looking at metrics. One is more looking at the processes which we have to strengthen in terms of the linkages, etc. The second is, which is more outcome based. I think if we take care of the former one, and probably I feel ki the outcome should automatically follow. Though it cannot happen in a year or two. It's a long journey, but I think somewhere we need to begin. That's what I actually found as a difference, particularly in my visiting assignments in some of the best universities, is that there is a lot of enriching of each of these activities for the other one, which probably we need to strengthen.
A very useful starting way. It's almost like a social science problem, deconstructing.
Yeah.
And we tend to see input and output in probably simplistic terms, but obviously when you have so more metrics that you're assessing, probably going to get a better answer if you can.
Yeah, your voice is actually a little low. Maybe you can.
Okay. Yeah. I think I need to get closer.
Yeah.
So the second question I had was, it's one of the critiques of, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear.
Yeah, one of the critiques of the Indian academic institutions is that they're often siloed.
Yeah.
So it's very encouraging to see the IIT Delhi AIMS is actually almost heterogeneous institutions.
Yeah.
One is in medical science, one is in engineering science. Some of the successes that you show, which are very impressive, what do you attribute? How did that partnership kind of fructify so well? What were the elements of that?
Yeah, so one thing which, though we are very close to All India Institute of Medical Sciences, only 3 kilometers, but it took still 50 years to come together. I would say we could have come maybe earlier. But I think what I see is that a lot of our traditional research is where you explore a particular area of science or technology. And sometimes you may look for applications of that, or you may not even try to look at. So it's more of area-based or a particular specialization-based. But this particular program which we did was very different. We said that we will not look at any particular area of science and technology. We will just look at the need as this thing, and whatever is the need. And what probably these fellows do is that they spend enormous amount of time in tertiary hospitals, primary healthcare centers, observing the doctors, patients, and other paramedic people, and look at what are the pain points, this thing, and then come back to their drawing board and look at which of these pain points they can address through technology and how to go about, let's say, building a product and solution. So what we did differently is to reverse that. Instead of saying technology first and then the application next, we said let the need be first, and whatever technology probably can address, because sometimes for a given problem you may have a multiple routes to address, which may come from different branches of engineering. But I think fellows were pretty open in terms of taking these paths. And we also involved a lot of IIT Delhi faculty from various departments and centers whenever their expertise is needed to solve these problems.
So do you see more of this happening? I mean, what I call the circles of excellence, where kind of collaborate in India to solve specific problems?
Yeah, it's happening, which we see not only in IIT Delhi, but even other places where people are definitely looking at some, because for a country such as ours, particularly India, which has a variety of needs. And one of the things which we have also seen that many of these needs are not market driven. So when they are not market driven, an industry may not actually jump also to probably take up these. So those kind of things, those are the other areas where I think IITs can make a big dent. And we thought that would be one area. But what we are seeing is that this type of activities are now started in all the IITs. Since it's only a beginning, probably impact of this can be seen in coming years.
Professor Rao, I'm going to take some participant questions.
Sure.
So one of the questions, which is probably a simple one that you can answer, which is what is Blue Sky Research? Then the second one is about IP, whether IP laws are more stringent and the rejection rates are higher. And the third one is what is the infrastructure that requirement for translating some of the advanced technologies a little more rapidly? Those were kind of the three questions I'm taking up from.
So maybe I'll take one by one. So the Blue Sky Research is a phrase which is used by many people to basically go and touch the pinnacle of research, which is generally in the sense that these are very emerging areas and where probably people would like to have as a first mover advantage and probably take a share of their contribution in emerging areas could be one. Somebody can, in fact, one of the common questions which are often asked is, why is that there are no Nobel laureates in IITs? Is there? So it actually probably requires a very different kind of a research, and probably taking it to a next level is definitely one. Often that's what is called as a blue sky research. There is no, I don't think there is any standard definition for that. Second question which you asked was, I didn't hear it completely.
Yes,
can you repeat
it's about the Indian patent laws. The participant mentions that rejection rate is very high. Is there more stringency compared to the, let's say, global Japanese patent laws or whatever?
I don't know. I don't have a data or a, probably in terms of how many are filed and how many are actually rejected. But one thing which I know that the government is now trying to push, particularly IP filing in a very big way. So if you really look at the filing, is awareness and filing of IP, particularly in educational institutes, is not very, very strong. In fact, I was actually chairing a committee for Ministry of Education to basically see how to do that. One of the things which we also came up is that if educational institutes would like to file a patent, not only the national, but even PCT, etc., is it possible to have a considerably reduced rates for filing these applications? And I'm told in general, this has been agreed to in principle. And we may have a soon probably a notification that that probably you don't have to spend much, particularly to file if the patent actually belongs to an educational institute, which is there. But I really don't have a data for the rejection, particularly from the different countries' perspective, which is there. But one thing is this Kapila program, which has been launched very recently by government, is trying to look at, even to introduce IP awareness courses at all UG, PG and PhD level. And there are courses which are already planned for that.
And one of the last questions from the participants, which I'm combining, is in the area of translation of knowledge, essentially. Or deep
I think,
tech.
yeah, your voice again broke last.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's translating the advanced technologies to practice. What would it require? Does it require certain other skill sets within the IIT system? Or even in terms of maybe infrastructure? What would it require to make it more higher volume, higher velocity, and so on?
Yeah, it does require. First thing which IITs would require is a strong I think strong offices which can probably facilitate the technology transfer, technology licensing. And second thing is also what we have seen, particularly at the national level. If somebody would like to probably do a proof of principle or a proof of concept prototype, the first funding is easily available. But the next tranche of funding is not easily available, the bigger funds. And for example, the programs such as Imprint, etc., are relatively new. We did not have these programs 5 years back. But these are very good programs, because if industry and institute would like to come together to do a translational research, you have a bigger money which is available than the normal research funding for you to do. But right now, this is still very small. We probably need more such schemes to do that. And one of the things which we also did is to, very recently, we started another incubation program, which is only meant for where the gestation periods of translations are very high, so that people, the students and the innovators who are involved in this translation can be supported financially for a longer duration with larger seed funds, so that the translation can happen. All these programs, again, are very, very new. And I think these are just the beginning. And we need many more at multiple places for things to happen.
Thank you, Professor Rao. I think that's all the questions for now.
So, Siddharth, let me ask one. Can you, Professor Rao, define deep tech research so that the audience knows exactly what you're saying?
Okay, so what we are calling it as a deep tech is, in fact, my subsequent slides have one or two examples. Maybe I can do that. What we are saying is, if I want to actually address, let's say, a need or an application, I need to probably do some science and research first before I can actually go back and do the application. So in other words, the technology development is a precursor before you actually solve the problem or an application, is what I'm looking at more broadly as a deep tech research.
So thank you. You can get to the second.
I'll just go back to my slides. Sorry. Okay, so I think proceeding further, we looked at probably more this subject more from the two quadrants. I think the most interesting quadrant where probably we need, where more efforts would be needed and which can have a huge impact, particularly for the country, is the pastures quadrant. So this is also related to what I call as a, when we said deep tech, somewhere you start with an application in mind or solving a grand challenge. But I think in order to solve this particular grand challenge, you need to do some science and research before you can come back and convert this into a product or a solution. And I think that's one area where, again, IITs have taken a very small initiative, or we can see almost every IIT have some specific groups which are fairly interdisciplinary, and where they are actually trying to look at specific problem to be addressed or a specific grand challenge to be addressed before they can actually make an impact. I'll just give probably an example. Like when I look at IIT Delhi, we hardly had centers of excellence a few years back. Particularly if you look at last few years, there are a large number of centers of excellence which have come up. And I could only put a few because I thought of using only a single page, but there are more. We have close to about 20 centers of excellence. And if you look at these centers of excellence, they have a very clear mandate. And many of them are supported by industry or government. Some of them have a mandate that you actually need to solve a specific problem, or I would say a specific area of work where you are trying to do. In other words, application first is the goal of most of these centers. Some of them are trying to do mostly in research, but I think most of them have a knowledge creation and knowledge application both as their mandate. And in this also, the knowledge application is a priority in most of these centers. Because these centers generally, when you have a center such as this, which works for a longer duration of, let's say, 5 years in a bigger groups in more interdisciplinary way, there are very high chances that some of the big grand challenges which we were not able to address can be done through this. And this list is, of course, from IIT Delhi, but we can clearly see a similar trend in all the other IITs also, including the new ones, which have centers of excellence in a specific area where they would like to make a mark, where they would like to address this. Could be one way to look at the Pastures quadrant. This is a direction where a lot of efforts would be needed going ahead, that how do we scale and also see that these programs are impactful is one aspect. So in the previous two cases, pathways, which I looked at, in one case, the knowledge creation is a priority and knowledge application is probably a secondary. In the second case, application is a priority and creation is a secondary. But I think in the pasture quadrant, you need to have both going simultaneously together in order to really address a problem. I'll just give an example. We have one of the labs which is actually looking at rapid diagnostics of certain diseases. And when this group of young people, when they started close to about now 8 years back, 9 years back, all of them got together and they said their idea is to see that the diagnosis of some of these diseases is both affordable and faster. For example, if you really look at things such as typhoid. So if you want to actually get the results of your diagnosis of a typhoid, it used to take many hours, at least a day. But I think now they came up with a system where you can actually do it in 6 hours or even less. Now this required a very different science and a very different new technology development before this faster and cheaper diagnostics could be built. And they definitely required a lot of knowledge creation activities simultaneously. So one of the things which this group did is very interesting. They were lucky to get 4 or 5 very bright young people who had both inclination to do PhD as well as an inclination to have their own startup in terms of addressing these needs. So when the students joined for PhD, they immediately created a startup which is called as a Valutude Primus. And the work kept on happening both at the knowledge creation side as well as knowledge application side. Now the students have graduated and this startup has grown, and they were able to come up with variety of new diagnostic devices which are now either reach the market or trying to reach the market. But when they started, they were very clear that in order to stretch the limits of probably these devices, they need definitely new knowledge creation and science. and they were lucky to get some of these students. So it's not very common where you have a group of students who are doing both their academic research as well as their own startup, to see that the research output immediately becomes available as a product and a solution is one such example. So this is one example. I'm sure IITs would have more such examples, definitely. I think so. And this is another area where probably we need to do. Instead of most of the labs we have seen where the knowledge creation or publication is a priority. But if they can also have this secondary goal of application and do simultaneously, a lot of good things can happen, is my belief. There is another very interesting case is of IIT Madras. IIT Madras started this advanced manufacturing technology centers. So when they started this particular center, it's actually started as a institute government industry collaboration. And all the problems which this particular lab wanted to address are given by the industry. So there are multiple industries which are participating, and jointly they have identified exactly 11 technology gaps which they need to address. And institute actually provides a lot of new knowledge creation, and industry brings the knowledge application point of view. And this is something which has been started and seems to be doing well. This is a relatively a new center, came back a couple of years back, but has already done a substantial work to show that you can always have this creation application linkage and do both of them simultaneously. That is what I look at more as a Pastures quadrant when we look at the previous graph which we look at. Another a good example of, I would say, is most of us are familiar with this AMTZ, which is a Andhra government's medtech zone, is a very interesting example of a model which country has not tried earlier. So this has become kind of a one-stop place where a medical entrepreneur can actually go to this place, and all the requirements of new medical technology or new medical device development can happen at one single place, which is very important. For example, what can be done is you are not only coming up with a new concepts or a new proof of concepts, but you have a manufacturing facilities to produce them. You have a research labs and testing labs to basically assess and test. You have the regulation, which is very crucial to medtech space. Also, all the facilities for getting your device regulated available in the same place. BIS, which is also located in the same place, looks at the standard requirements for these devices. Then there is if you want to get your product certified, even CE marking, you can do it at the same place. And all the other facilities such as IP, etc., which are required, is at one place where you don't have to actually go out of the campus in order to do that. And very remarkable thing is that this entire center came up in just 1 year, and very operational, and looking at simple products such as mass to very complex products such as MRI machines in this particular zone. Now, the two examples which I gave, one which is particularly the diagnostic lab is, sorry, the IIT Madras Mission Tool Center is, it's actually located in IIT Madras, but industries are not situated in IIT Madras. They only give a problem, they collaborate. Industries are situated very far from the IIT Madras. If I look at the AMTZ, all the facilities which are required for new product development and innovation is available at one place, but the science which is required for these medtech, etc., is located at a further places. They have a collaboration with IITs and Indian Institute of Science for more collaboration, more related to science and research, because they don't do a research at their own place. If we can actually combine both these facilities, then it could be even wonderful. And I think that's a concept with which UK started what we call as a catapult centers. So catapult is nothing but a network of, it's basically pooling all the resources available in a particular area to see that you do something which is bigger. All of them located centrally at one place, often adjacent to a university, where industry people also part of the catapult centers. And the university also gives its resources to do. And catapults have their own manpower. Together, they work on multiple niche technologies. So 9 such centers have been identified, which are spread over 40 locations. But it's basically like providing all the intellectual, physical, and financial resources at one place and bringing all the stakeholders at one place to see that something wonderful comes out. And I think this type of a model is still, we don't have in India. And I think probably it's worth experimenting in this thing. Just to give an example, one of the 9 catapults is in high value manufacturing. So high value manufacturing has dozens of projects, and each project has a consortia of people from academia, industry, all happening at one physical location. For example, there is a major project which is called "How do you design the next generation robo to reduce the cost of aircraft manufacturing?" Very niche area, multiple partners, highly interdisciplinary teams, all at a physically located at one center and trying to address. And there is a huge investment which government has also made to make these centers operational. This is also one model, probably it's worth trying. We still don't have a model at this scale, particularly in our country. But overall, what I wanted to basically say that when we hit a pinnacle of our both knowledge creation and knowledge application, it's more like a cycle, each one trying to push the limits of the other. And I think ideally, the difference between a knowledge creation and knowledge application actually becomes blurred. Engineers doing the science and scientists doing the engineering. And it's a very, very interesting space. And I think we are still not there, but I think we can be. So I think I'll just stop it there and take more questions.
Thank you, Professor Rao. I mean, some of the analysis is really useful and insightful. Some of the examples are very encouraging in terms of how the IITs can certainly be more relevant to industry and society at large. One of the questions that I was thinking of is, when you look at the assistive technologies which you have been involved with, as well as the biodesign labs with AIMS. Social impact is a sector which industry is more and more focused on. As you know, that the term triple bottom line became popular at some point, where the third bottom line was basically social impact. And then there's the fourth bottom line, which is the environmental impact. In other words, businesses and technologies have to run with these two as the focus areas, that they are socially responsible and then they are environmentally friendly. I IITs have, obviously reservoir of technology that they work on. I know that IIT Delhi many years ago had that, I think, appropriate technology, Center for Appropriate Technology. IIT Madras has RTBI, the Rural Technology Incubator. How do you see, there is a convergence obviously from industry interest that they have to focus on these, and the knowledge that exists within the IITs. Is there a convergence here that could work to provide more social impact technologies?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. So ultimately, even if it is a social innovation, for it to be a sustainable and impactful, the industry's role is very important. And sometimes it may not be a major industries; it may be MSMEs which are there. If you really look at both the biodesign program and the Assistic Lab, some of the technology transfers which we have done is not for the major companies. These are for SMEs. And we also kind of looked at a very different business models in order to take these social innovations to market. Since they are not market driven, an SME probably won't take all the expenses to develop these products to make it market ready. So what we did in some of the cases is we got a grant, which is a joint grant for the SME and the IIT to make it a market ready, so that at least the development cost can be met, so that people can still be profitable. Because most of the beneficiaries of these products and solutions still come from the bottom of a pyramid, which probably they can't afford. I'll just give you an example. We developed a product and then transferred to a company in Chennai, which is called Phoenix Medical Systems. We did a technology transfer, but they won't take it forward because if they would have actually invested and produced a product, it would have costed about a 15,000 rupees. But what we did is we got them a big grant of about 1.5 crores because this is a social product. There are charities which are ready to fund such products. And they could actually now sell the product instead of 15,000 rupees at a 3,500 rupees and still make their profit. So sometimes it may not be a big industries who may or may not be a part of a social innovation, but we had a very good partnership with many of the SMEs in terms of taking product all the way to market. And for this particular product, I think we were able to sell at least 100,000 units, and also company was even able to give a royalty of at least 1 crore so far. I think your voice is again.
Yeah, I said that's wonderful to hear that. The other question which we have discussed maybe in the past is, students, how do you kind of embed more the scientific and technology temperament? Because certainly some of the areas like manufacturing or deep tech require that temperament. Can they be involved more in programs, R&D programs or technology transfer programs to a larger extent, and what would it take?
Yeah. Again, a very interesting question. What we have seen is that students are very excited to work on areas where it actually connects them to real world. Unfortunately, our curriculum doesn't have some opportunities, but not much. If you really look at our curriculum, a lot of it is dominated by lectures and examinations. But I think the moment you bring other aspects, particularly giving them the experiential learning, social learning to connect with the real world, we had a very good success. I'll just tell you, in the assistive technology lab, we were able to retain at least 8 to 10 undergraduate students to work for many years beyond their graduation, leaving their placements, which is there. I still have a student who graduated in 2014 and still working with me in the lab. And he's responsible for taking the 2 products to market almost single-handedly. Now, it's because we still don't provide large number of such opportunities to connect them with real world problems and even give them freedom to address those aspects. But if we can do that, there is a large pool of students who are waiting to jump this bandwagon. And that's what has been my experience of working with large number of undergraduate and postgraduate students, particularly undergraduate students.
The other thing that we discussed at the conclave where you were there was faculty taking sabbaticals in industry. Does the IIT system today, is that happening or is it encouraged?
Yeah, it's very much. In fact, we launched a program which is called FIRE. It's basically a faculty entrepreneurship program. If a faculty would like to take a leave and would like to probably work on a venture, we give 3 years leave, 1 year paid leave, and 2 years unpaid leave, and also a seed funding, which is pretty big to do that. For some reason, we still do not have many takers. For some reason, particularly the faculty who join as a young, I think their priorities for the first 10, 12 years is very different there. And probably our metrics of evaluation of faculty and assessment are also very different. And if they want to spend like 3 years doing this, probably it will not add value to their career tracks, etc. But I think this program is very much launched and it's available. And we are actually looking at more faculty to take this track, but it's available.
Even if they do, the summer in industry, 3 months in the summer every year, I think it creates a certain amount of excitement also about more, the applied application of technology.
Yeah, I agree.
Students themselves probably would get excited about it.
Yeah, I agree. But only thing is also many of the faculty who come from very different type of a training would also need to have kind of an awareness what is possible in the knowledge application area. That is one thing. And that's definitely one thing. But I think giving more incentives and recognizing those efforts would be very, very crucial if you want to pull more faculty to do that. But good thing is we have 5 to 10% of our faculty who are founders in some startup companies at least, okay, which used to be pretty small if you look at 10 years back. But I think this is a good percentage to start with, and we are happy for that.
And there is one last question that I had, which was, IIT Delhi, among a few other institutions, got the Institute of Eminence tag in 2018. What does it mean in real terms, in terms of emphasis or focus of the Institutes of Eminence? Do you see more focus on industry relevance or industry focus?
I think if we want to be an Institute of Eminence, we need to address all of those. So we have also now looked at our vision and came up with a vision 2030. We have looked at like 5 bold aspirations, which we should be doing it. And also at the same time, looking at the impact more from the global perspective, because that's very important for an Institute of Eminence. Like one of the verticals is how do you really make entrepreneurial activities which can make an impact at the global level? So I'm also looking after that vertical as a chair, which is one of them. For example, there is one vertical which is called technology and society. How do you connect more and more? There is another area where we are trying to look at, you can't make an impact in every possible area. So identifying certain specific strengths and key areas where institute should concentrate so that it can actually make it big rather than spreading very thin in all the areas. So these are some of the thoughts which we are looking at, and connect with the industry and connect with the society, and knowledge application is very high in all these aspirations.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Rao. It was a really wonderful talk, and hopefully all the participants got an insight, certainly from one of the IITs and from you as champion and certainly a very distinguished academic who had crossed the chasm from academic research to applied research.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Ashok now.
Yeah, there are some more questions probably.
Yeah, I think there are a few questions, Professor Rao, that you may want to consider. There is, these are all little questions that kind of, all add up to a big whole, right?
Yeah.
A big complete thing. All the way from, how do we encourage undergrad students to be involved in entrepreneurial application of deep tech research is one.
Yeah.
What is possibly the best model for an IIT to transfer technology? Is it through our, currently, for example, IIT Delhi has FIT as a Section 8 company that does the transfer. And so do many of the other IITs have equivalent systems. So what is the best way? I think there was a question on, who's responsible to bring up a catapult center?
Mm-hmm.
Is it academia? Is it industry? Is it a combination? Is it government? Who should be taking the onus on that? And, so these are the 2-3 things that all add up to a grand whole, if you will, that you want to talk about.
Yeah. So I think probably I can take a couple of these questions, definitely. So undergraduates probably doing a deep tech is definitely one option. But I think somewhere once you go into a little deeper, the post-graduation or postgraduate education also becomes a very key, which is an important. Because if you really look at undergraduate education in IITs, they're pretty broad-based. They prepare you for variety of career tracks. And each of the areas, for example, mechanical engineering, when I look at now, it has expanded so much and it has spread wings in so many directions that it's very difficult to make a good mechanical engineer in 4 years is this thing. So we generally say that we give you a broad education in one branch of engineering, but if somebody is really keen, they should probably take the postgraduate to specialize themselves in that. And somewhere I think postgraduate education is a very crucial. Now, this is also a kind of a challenge for IITs. Almost all IITs now have more postgraduate students than the undergraduate students. But a lot of entrepreneurial activities are happening through undergraduate students, not through postgraduate students. So that is also one of the challenge. How do you encourage postgraduate students to be embrace the entrepreneurship? Is still, I don't think we have a formula which is there, but it's a challenge, and I think it needs more discussion. Definitely, I don't have an immediate answer for that, which is there.
Is a course on one of the credits courses on all these aspects, these, shall we call them soft aspects of engineering? Would that be beneficial, both having one at the undergraduate and one at the postgraduate level?
Those are also there. In fact, in the last curriculum, we introduced many such opportunities also. So what we call as IIT Delhi, an undergraduate student not only has to earn the credits, they also have to earn 15 what we call as a non-graded soft units to graduate. It's a graduation requirement. It's not a option, which is there. And that is also helping. And these are giving a lot of opportunities to students to explore this thing. But somewhere I think we need a broader discussion in terms of like the expectation of undergraduate students, particularly from the engineering education and our present system. There are certain gaps to be filled before we can do that. Definitely one aspect. What was your second question? Sorry for.
So one was on the undergraduate. Second was on the licensing structures in the IITs.
Yeah, I think, for example, when we look at most of the IITs, they have a pretty big offices now for the technology transfer, technology licensing, and IP management. I think they all started a couple of decades back. Only thing is they have not grown big. Activities have grown big, but I think the office is still small. We are also trying to look at how to expand that. What we would ideally, what is when we look at the technology transfer and licensing which is happening, is a more of a facilitator rather than a marketing wing, which is there. So in other words, in IITs, we still don't have somebody who proactively looks at what are all the technologies which are available and how to sell it to industries and SMEs is a gap. And I think IIT ACB probably can bridge this particular gap. It could be an agenda which is there, because often when industry comes with a specific question, then the connection is made with a faculty, or a faculty identifies a technology transfer partner, then this office facilitates all the legal and other work. But the proactive marketing and planning to reach out is still weak, I would say. I won't say it doesn't exist, but it's probably needs to be still strengthened, which is there.
The third question was on the catapults. Who takes the onus? Is it the IITs? Is it industry? Is it government? Is it a combination of everybody?
And I think ultimately all three would be needed in this system. So it can be a good discussion. I'm sure the government would be very happy to experiment. And when we look at the present document, I was also going through the 5th draft of Science, Technology, Innovation Policy, which has just come out of from the DST. There are measures. It doesn't say catapult, but it says there need to be enough measures. I'm sure, I think most of the schemes which we see are started when somebody from IIT goes to government and tells that let's start this or we need this. And in most of the cases, government is quite happy to facilitate that. And so somewhere, I think the initiation has to be made from IITs, but I think industry would be very happy to join, and they could be the biggest beneficiaries. But government would be very happy to look at this very seriously and fund it.
So I think we are hitting our time breaker.
Yeah.
So I will just wrap this up. Normally, Dr. Sushila Venkatraman would wrap up, and she's very good at it. I'm a beginner in that area. So I think it was a very interesting talk, taking us from invention to innovation and the virtual cycle. I think everyone probably knows all these issues, but to see it kind of systematized in a diagram, between knowledge creation, knowledge application, and the interplay between all of that, I think was very crisp and understandable. The linkages between teaching, research, and innovation the 10 linkages that you talked about that gives us the metrics for the outcomes, I think also brings a lot of clarity in terms of, how do we continue to improve and how do you measure ourselves and continue to improve. And of course, the links need to be strengthened specifically between the knowledge creation and the knowledge application areas. One thing that you talked about, and I somewhat disagree with you, is that nanotechnology example that you gave. While yes, we are number 3 in that list of patents, but if you see, we are at 15,000, the US is at 24,000, and China is at 74,000.
Yeah.
So there are very large gaps.
Yeah.
While we can take comfort in being number 3 in the world, I think we still have a long way to go. Yeah. And on the nanotech patents, while we are 19 out of 20, the ones who beat us are people like Austria and Australia, who have a population that's 1% of, virtually 1% of what we have. Yeah. So I think,
so there is no disagreement there. There is an agreement. I don't
know. So really that, and then I think the idea of converting our research output into realizations that are beneficial to the country and society, I think is very, very critical. Given the inequalities and the inequities that exist, and and the challenges that exist as well. On one hand, I think we should be able to scale up and create, unicorns are is a good metric, but they are still not an accumulation of wealth. I mean, they are accumulation of valuation. But if you were to have lots and lots of machines out there made in India for the world, that would be an accumulation of wealth. And the example of the IIT Delhi AIMS Biodesign Fellowship, I think that's an interesting approach of getting multidisciplinary institutions to work together to take it forward. Clearly, various forms of bio, whether it's pharmaceuticals, biomedical engineering, or otherwise, healthcare and all that, is a big area, especially for a country like ours with our population, that, anytime we get unfortunately hit by something, that it hits us in a big way. So I think that's important.
And also the ratio of imports and exports is pretty high in medtech. So there is a huge opportunity actually.
Yeah. So, the knowledge, so I think what I'm taking away is that there are three flavors. There is knowledge creation higher than knowledge application. There's knowledge application higher than knowledge creation. And if you go to the Pasteur quadrant, there is the middle path, which is a balanced path of, both happening at the same time. And I think that's where we do have centers of excellence in plenty. And I think there are multiple opportunities that we have seen at IIT ACB of linking them up with the MSMEs. Yeah. Many of the MSMEs that we have talked to have said to us that they are so bogged down by regulatory things, that they don't have the time for research and to upgrade their technology skills to be competitive on a worldwide platform. So I think there's clearly an opportunity where our centers of excellence can, kind of step up and help these. And that leads you to the concept of the catapult, which has been successfully done. I think in the UK, it was more prominent than in other parts of Europe. But like you said, it's worth experimenting and building around it. So there are many takeaways from this in terms of how the IITs can take industry to the next level. I think at the bottom of it all is, I think we need to dream big and, aim big to really make it, up in the global scale. So thank you so much, Professor Rao, for this very, very enlightening talk. Essentially to simplify what we already knew into a very easily understandable and actionable, metric, rubric, for us to take forward. Thank you very much for your time for this, illuminating talk. Siddharth, thank you so much for your support in making this happen as well. This talk has been recorded and it will be available on YouTube within the next 48 hours for download. And everyone, as usual, will get a mailer giving them the link. All our past talks are also available on the IIT Alumni Center Bengaluru YouTube channel. We've had 31 talks so far, so it's a pretty good repository of knowledge creation and dissemination. So it's one of your boxes. And there are many opportunities here to take that knowledge and convert it into application. So I think we can all. So thank you very much for all those who attended. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And we look forward to hosting you again in our next webinar. Thank you and have a nice.
Thanks for this opportunity. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.